Marcus Chen stood in the employment line at Galactic Station 7, his stomach growling loud enough to embarrass him. The 3-day-old sandwich in his pocket was his last meal, and his 8-year-old daughter Emma was waiting back on Earth with nothing but empty cupboards. He clutched the job application in his sweaty palm, hoping this would finally be the break they needed. The line moved slowly, filled with beings from dozens of worlds. Blue-skinned Zellarians with their elegant tentacle hair, the rock-like granite folk who barely fit through doorways, and sleek void runners who seemed to phase in and out of reality. Marcus felt small among them all, just another desperate human trying to make ends meet. "Next," called the employment officer, a tall creature with 4 arms and silver skin. Marcus stepped forward, his worn work boots squeaking against the polished floor. "Name and identification code," the officer said, without looking up from his holographic display. "Marcus Chen." "Identification." B547. Marcus held out his wrist, showing the simple metal bracelet that all humans wore for galactic identification. It was scratched and dented from years of manual labor jobs. The officer's scanner beeped as it read the code. Suddenly, every screen in the building flashed red. Emergency alarms began wailing. The officer dropped his scanner, his 4 eyes widening in terror as he stared at Marcus. "Security. Code Omega! We have a Code Omega situation," the officer screamed into his communicator. His voice cracked with panic. Marcus looked around, confused. "I'm sorry, did I fill something out wrong? I can fix it." But the officer had already scrambled backward, knocking over his chair. Other beings in the line began backing away from Marcus, their conversations turning to frightened whispers. A granite folk actually started running, his heavy footsteps shaking the ground. "Sir, please remain calm and do not move," came a voice over the station speakers. "Security teams are en route." Marcus raised his hand slowly. "Look, I don't know what's happening. I just need a job. I have a little girl back home who needs to eat." Within minutes, a squad of heavily armed security guards surrounded him. They wore full combat armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. Behind them came a figure Marcus had only seen in news broadcasts, Commander Vex of the Galactic Security Force, one of the most powerful beings in known space. Commander Vex was a void runner, tall and lean with skin that seemed to shift between solid and shadow. His 3 eyes glowed with an inner light, and when he spoke, reality seemed to bend around his words. "Bracelet code B547, Commander Vex said, his voice carrying an odd mixture of fear and respect. "We thought your line was extinct." Marcus looked down at his simple metal bracelet. "This old thing? I've had it since I was a kid. My grandmother gave it to me before she died. She said it belonged to my great-great-grandfather." Commander Vex stepped closer, but still maintained a careful distance. "Do you know what that bracelet represents, human?" "It's just family jewelry," Marcus said. "Worth maybe 20 credits if I sold it, but I never would. It's all I have left of my family history." The commander's 3 eyes began glowing brighter. "That bracelet marks you as a descendant of the Terran War Machine Division. Your ancestor was part of the human military force that ended the Void Wars 3 centuries ago." Marcus blinked. "The what wars? I never heard of any Void Wars." A collective gasp rose from the crowd. Even the security guards looked shocked. Commander Vex's expression shifted from fear to something approaching awe. "The Void Wars nearly destroyed 16 solar systems," the commander explained. "An ancient evil called the Shadow Collective had consumed entire worlds, turning them into lifeless husks. They seemed unstoppable until Earth sent a single division of soldiers to help." Marcus shook his head. "That doesn't sound right. Humans aren't warriors. We're just people. We work regular jobs, raise families, watch movies. Your people ended a war that had raged for 40 years, Commander Vex continued. They did it in 6 months. The Shadow Collective, beings of pure destructive energy that could eat planets, were completely eliminated. After the war, most humans returned to Earth and seemed to forget what they had done. The crowd around them had grown larger. Beings were pointing at Marcus and speaking in hushed, reverent tones. Someone in the back shouted, "It's one of them! One of the Terran War Machine." Marcus felt overwhelmed. "Look, I think there's been a mistake. My family tree is pretty boring. Farmers, factory workers, a few teachers, nobody important." Commander Vex pulled out a handheld device and scanned Marcus's bracelet. The device immediately began displaying complex readouts and flashing warnings. "The genetic markers are confirmed," the commander announced. "Direct bloodline descendant of Sergeant First Class Chen. 47th Terran Assault Brigade. His unit personally eliminated 3 shadow commanders and their entire fleet. Marcus sat down heavily on a nearby bench. This is crazy. I can barely afford groceries. I'm here looking for a job loading cargo ships. I'm not some legendary warrior. But as he spoke, memories began stirring in the back of his mind. Stories his grandmother used to tell him when he was little. Stories he had dismissed as fantasy. Tales of his great-great-grandfather who went to space and came back different, who would wake up screaming from nightmares about shadows that ate stars. Your grandmother never told you about your heritage? Commander Vex asked. She told me stories, Marcus admitted, but they seemed like fairy tales. She said great-great-grandpa fought monsters in space. She said our family was special, that we had to stay ready. I thought she was just trying to make our poor life sound more exciting. Commander Vex exchanged glances with his security team. The employment request you submitted, it was for basic cargo work, correct? Marcus nodded. 12 credits an hour. It's not much, but it's honest work. I have a different offer, the commander said. The Galactic Defense Force has been waiting 3 centuries for someone like you to appear. We would like to offer you a position as a strategic military advisor. Marcus laughed despite his confusion. I don't know anything about military strategy. I fix air conditioning units and deliver pizzas. The genetic memory is dormant but intact, Commander Vex explained. With proper awakening protocols, you would remember everything your ancestor knew. Every battle tactic, every strategic insight that ended the Void Wars. The station around them had gone completely quiet. Every being was watching Marcus, waiting for his response. In the distance, more security ships were arriving, their lights flashing in the darkness of space. Marcus thought about Emma, alone in their tiny apartment with no food. He thought about the bills stacking up, the eviction notice on their door. Then he looked at his bracelet, really looked at it for the first time in years. Maybe his grandmother's stories weren't fairy tales after all. Marcus found himself in a medical bay deep inside Galactic Command, surrounded by machines he couldn't begin to understand. Dr. Kayla, a 6-armed healing specialist from the Crystal Worlds, attached monitoring devices to his head while explaining the memory awakening process. The genetic memory is stored in your DNA, she said, her crystalline features reflecting the room's blue lights. Your ancestors' experiences, knowledge, and tactical skills are all there, locked away. We just need to unlock them. Marcus gripped the communication device they had given him to call Emma. His daughter's voice still echoed in his mind from their conversation an hour ago. Daddy, when are you coming home? She had asked. Soon, sweetheart. Daddy might have found a really good job. We might not have to worry about food anymore. But now, lying on this examination table surrounded by alien technology, Marcus wondered what he was getting himself into. The payment offer was incredible. Enough to buy a house, send Emma to the best schools, secure their future for generations. But at what cost? Are you ready to begin? Dr. Kayla asked. Before Marcus could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the medical bay. Red lights flashed and automated voices echoed through the corridors. All personnel to battle stations. This is not a drill. Unknown hostiles detected in Sector 7. Commander Vex burst through the medical bay doors. Doctor, we need to accelerate the process. We have a situation. Impossible, Dr. Kala replied. The memory awakening takes 12 hours minimum. Rushing it could damage his mind permanently. Marcus sat up on the table. What's happening out there? Commander Vex's 3 eyes were glowing brighter than Marcus had ever seen. Long-range sensors have detected energy signatures we haven't seen in 300 years. Shadow Collective signatures. The room went dead silent. Dr. Kayla's crystalline skin began changing colors rapidly, a sign of extreme stress in her species. That's impossible, she whispered. The Terran war machine eliminated every shadow entity. The war records are very clear. Records can be wrong, Commander Vex said grimly. 3 shadow scouts just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of our solar system. They're not moving yet, just watching. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What do shadow scouts do? They evaluate targets before the main force arrives, the commander explained. If they determine a system is suitable for consumption, they call in shadow destroyers. Entire fleets of them. Through the medical bay's viewport, Marcus could see the massive galactic defense fleet mobilizing. Hundreds of ships were taking defensive positions, their weapons charging with energy that lit up space like artificial stars. How long do we have? Marcus asked. Unknown. Could be hours, could be days. But when they move fast. The last time Shadow Scouts appeared, the planet they were watching was completely consumed within 6 hours. Dr. Kayla began frantically adjusting her equipment. I can attempt an emergency awakening, but the risks are enormous. His mind might not survive the shock of sudden memory integration. Marcus thought about Emma again. If these shadow things consumed planets, she wouldn't survive whether his mind broke or not. Do it, Marcus, Commander Vex said seriously. You need to understand what you're volunteering for. When your ancestors' memories awaken, you won't just remember his knowledge. You'll remember everything, every battle, every death he witnessed, every sacrifice he made. It changes people. Marcus stood up from the examination table and walked to the viewport. The Galactic Defense Fleet looked impressive, but he could see fear in the way the ships moved, the hesitant positioning of their formations. How many beings live in this solar system? He asked. Approximately 40 billion across 12 inhabited worlds, Commander Vex replied. Marcus looked down at his bracelet. The simple metal seemed to pulse with a faint warmth he had never noticed before. Maybe it had always been there waiting. My daughter is one of those 40 billion, Marcus said quietly. Begin the procedure. Dr. Kayla moved quickly, inserting neural connectors into ports behind Marcus's ears he never knew he had. These ports were hidden in your genetics, she explained. Another inheritance from your ancestor. The process is beginning now. Try to stay calm. At first, Marcus felt nothing. Then slowly, like dawn breaking over a mountain, foreign memories began seeping into his consciousness. Images of battles in space, of creatures made of living shadow consuming entire star systems. Knowledge of weapons, tactics, and strategies flooded his mind. But it wasn't just military knowledge. He could feel his great-great-grandfather's emotions, his determination to protect innocent life, his love for his own family back on Earth. The man had volunteered for the war not for glory, but because he understood that some fights had to be fought. The Shadow Scouts are moving, a technician announced over the intercom. They're heading for the third planet. Marcus's eyes snapped open. No, they're not. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. His voice had changed, carrying new authority and certainness. They're creating a distraction, Marcus continued. The memory's flowing faster now. Shadow Scouts never attack directly. They're drawing our fleet away from the real target. Commander Vex stepped closer. What real target? Marcus stood up, neural connectors still attached to his head. Through his ancestors' memories, he could see the Shadow Collective's strategy as clearly as if he had planned it himself. The Central Command Station, Marcus said. They want to eliminate our communication and coordination capabilities first. There are shadow infiltrators already aboard this station. Dr. Kayla's equipment began screaming warnings as Marcus's neural activity spiked far beyond normal parameters. But instead of causing damage, the integration was accelerating. How many infiltrators? Commander Vex demanded. Marcus closed his eyes, accessing tactical knowledge that was 3 centuries old but still perfectly relevant. Minimum 12, maximum 20. They've been here for days, maybe weeks, disguised as regular station personnel. They'll strike when the fleet moves to intercept the scouts. As if summoned by his words, explosions echoed through the station. The lights flickered, and gravity fluctuated wildly. Security breach in sectors 4, 7, and 12, the automated voice announced. Unknown hostiles identified throughout the station. Commander Vex activated his combat gear with practiced efficiency. How do we fight them? Marcus's transformation was nearly complete. The memories weren't just returning. They were integrating with his own experiences, creating something new. His great-great-grandfather's knowledge combined with 3 centuries of human innovation and adaptability. The same way we fought them before, Marcus said, pulling the neural connectors from his head, but better. He walked to Dr. Kayla's equipment array and began rapidly manipulating controls with impossible familiarity. I need you to broadcast a specific frequency through the station's communication system. What frequency? She asked. Marcus's fingers moved across the alien interface as if he had been using it all his life. One that will make the shadow infiltrators reveal themselves. They can't maintain their disguises when exposed to human neural wavelengths. The frequency began broadcasting, and immediately, screams echoed through the station corridors. But these weren't screams of pain. They were screams of rage from creatures being forced back into their true forms. Now, Marcus said, turning to Commander Vex, we hunt. The station corridors had become a battlefield. Marcus moved through them with deadly precision, his inherited memories guiding every step. The shadow infiltrators had revealed their true forms, writhing masses of darkness with glowing red cores that pulsed like malevolent hearts. Behind him, Commander Vex and a squad of elite guards struggled to keep up. What had taken Marcus's ancestor years to learn, Marcus was applying instinctively. "Left corridor," Marcus called out, not even looking as he fired a modified pulse rifle. The energy beam struck a shadow infiltrator that had been creeping along the ceiling, invisible to everyone else. The creature shrieked and dissolved into smoking vapor. "How did you know it was there?" Commander Vex asked, breathing heavily. "They always use the ceiling for ambush attacks in enclosed spaces," Marcus replied, already moving toward the next threat. "It's in their nature. They think in 3 dimensions, but they prefer attacking from above because most species don't look up during combat." They reached a junction where 3 corridors met. Marcus held up his hand, signaling the squad to stop. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of battle as station security fought other infiltrators throughout the facility. "There are 4 of them waiting around the corner," Marcus said quietly. 2 on the walls, 1 on the ceiling, 1 on the floor. "They're using a pincer formation." Commander Vex scanned with his advanced equipment. "I'm not reading anything." "Your scanners can't detect them when they're in full stealth mode," Marcus explained. "But they have to maintain physical contact with surfaces to stay hidden. Watch the air circulation patterns." He pointed to barely visible disturbances in the airflow near the ceiling. To everyone else, it looked like normal ventilation movement. To Marcus, it was a clear map of enemy positions. "When I give the signal, everyone fires at the positions I indicate," Marcus said. "Don't hesitate, don't second guess. They're faster than you think." Before anyone could respond, Marcus dove around the corner, rolling low while firing upward. His shots hit empty air, but suddenly a shadow infiltrator materialized, screaming as it fell from the ceiling. The rest of the squad followed his directions, firing at seemingly empty spaces that erupted with dissolving shadow creatures. "Impossible," one of the guards whispered. "How did the humans defeat these things 300 years ago? We have better technology now and we're barely surviving." Marcus reloaded his weapon with practiced efficiency. "Technology isn't everything. My ancestors' unit didn't win because they had better guns. They won because they understood something about the Shadow Collective that everyone else missed." "What?" Commander Vex asked. "The shadows aren't just monsters," Marcus explained as they moved deeper into the station. "They're a hive mind. Every individual shadow creature is connected to every other one. They share information instantly, learn from each other's experiences, adapt to new threats within minutes." They reached the central command center, where the station's primary computers controlled everything from life support to defensive systems. The massive doors had been torn apart, and inside they could see emergency lights flickering. "That should make them impossible to defeat," Commander Vex said. Marcus smiled grimly. "It should. But humans discovered something during the war. The hive-mind connection goes both ways. If you can get close enough to a shadow commander, you can feed false information directly into their network." Inside the command center, a massive shadow infiltrator was interfacing directly with the station's main computer. Unlike the others, this one was the size of a small vehicle, with dozens of tentacle-like appendages connected to various control systems. "Shadow Commander," Commander Vex breathed. "I thought they were all destroyed." "This is just a lieutenant," Marcus said, studying the creature. "The real commanders are much larger, but this one is connected directly to their hive network. Perfect." Before anyone could stop him, Marcus ran straight toward the Shadow Commander. The creature's multiple eyes focused on him, and it began changing shape, growing larger and more threatening. "Marcus, don't!" Commander Vex shouted. "Direct contact with a Shadow Commander will drain your life force completely." But Marcus didn't slow down. As the creature reached for him with tendrils of pure darkness, Marcus grabbed one of the appendages with his bare hands. Pain shot through his entire body as the Shadow Commander began draining his energy. But instead of pulling away, Marcus held on tighter. Through their connection, he could feel the vast network of the Shadow Collective. Thousands of voices sharing information across space. And then Marcus began feeding them lies. Using techniques his ancestor had developed, Marcus projected false memories into the hive network. Images of massive human fleets that didn't exist, of weapons that were never built, of human colonies spread across the galaxy ready to fight. The Shadow Commander realized what was happening and tried to break the connection, but Marcus held on with desperate strength. Through the link, he could sense Shadow Scouts throughout the solar system suddenly becoming confused, receiving conflicting information about human capabilities. The human fleets are mobilizing, he projected into their network. Thousands of ships, weapons that can destroy shadow matter itself. The humans have been preparing for your return. The Shadow Commander's struggles became more violent, but Marcus could see his deception was working. Through the Hive network, he sensed shadow forces beginning to retreat, pulling back from their planned attacks. But the drain on his life force was becoming overwhelming. His vision began to blur and he could feel his strength leaving him. "Marcus," Emma's voice seemed to echo in his mind. "Daddy, come home." The thought of his daughter gave him the strength to push one final massive lie into the Shadow network. Images of Earth surrounded by an impenetrable defense grid, of human soldiers spread throughout the galaxy, of trap after trap waiting for shadow forces. The Shadow Commander released him and began shrieking in panic. Through the station's communication system, they could hear similar screams from shadow infiltrators throughout the facility. The creatures were abandoning their mission, fleeing toward escape pods and transport ships. Marcus collapsed to the floor, his life force nearly drained completely. Commander Vex and Dr. Kayla rushed to his side as the massive Shadow Commander dissolved into vapor and escaped through the station's ventilation system. "The deception won't last long," Marcus whispered weakly. "Maybe a few days, maybe a week. They'll figure out the truth eventually." Through the command center's main viewport, they watched as Shadow Scout ships began retreating from the solar system, fleeing toward hyperspace. "A week might be enough," Commander Vex said. "If we can convince the Galactic Council to take action, coordinate a real defense." Marcus shook his head. "The Galactic Council moves too slowly. By the time they finish debating, the Shadow Collective will return with a full invasion force." Dr. Kayla was frantically working with her medical equipment, trying to stabilize Marcus's drained life force. "He needs immediate treatment, but I've never seen anything like this. The shadow energy has contaminated his entire cellular structure." Commander Vex looked down at Marcus with something approaching desperation. "What do we do? You're the only one who knows how to fight them effectively." Marcus looked at his bracelet, still glowing faintly with warmth. Through his ancestors' memories, he could see a path forward. It was dangerous, maybe impossible, but it was their only hope. "There's something my ancestor discovered during the war," Marcus said quietly. "Something the history books don't record. There's a way to turn the Shadow Collective's greatest strength into their greatest weakness." Marcus spent 2 days recovering in the medical bay, while Dr. Kayla worked tirelessly to purge the shadow contamination from his system. During his recovery, he shared his ancestors' deepest secrets with Commander Vex and the Galactic Defense Council. The Shadow Collective isn't just a hive mind, Marcus explained to the assembled leaders via holographic conference. It's a parasitic consciousness that feeds on the life force of entire civilizations. But here's what my ancestor discovered. It has a single point of failure. The council members, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy, listened with rapt attention. Admiral Kresh of the Void Runner fleet leaned forward in his chair. "What kind of failure point?" he asked. Marcus pulled up a 3-dimensional star chart, highlighting regions of space that had been consumed by shadows during the original war. "The Shadow Collective has a central consciousness, a core entity that controls the entire network. My ancestor called it the Shadow Heart. Destroy that and every shadow creature in the galaxy dies instantly." Commander Vex studied the chart. "Where is this Shadow Heart located?" "That's the problem," Marcus said. "It's mobile. It hides inside a massive structure called a Void Fortress, which can phase between dimensions. My ancestors' unit found it once, 300 years ago, but it escaped before they could destroy it." Dr. Kayla finished her scans and nodded to Marcus. "The shadow contamination is completely purged. Your life force is actually stronger than before. The exposure seems to have awakened additional genetic capabilities." Marcus felt the truth of her words. The connection to his ancestors' memories was now permanent, but it no longer felt foreign. The knowledge had become part of him, enhanced by his own human adaptability and creativity. "There's something else," Marcus continued. "The Shadow Heart has been trying to return to our dimension for 3 centuries. It's been building power, gathering strength. The scout attack was just a test to see if humans were still protecting this region of space. A new alarm began sounding throughout the station. Emergency broadcasts filled the corridors. Long-range sensors detect massive hyperspace disturbances. The automated voice announced, "Unknown fleet approaching from the galactic rim. Estimated arrival, 6 hours." The holographic council session erupted in panic. Representatives began shouting in dozens of languages while their translation devices struggled to keep up. Admiral Kresh pounded his fist on the table. 6 hours? That's impossible! Our fastest ships need days to cross that distance. Marcus felt a chill of recognition. Through his inherited memories, he knew exactly what was happening. They're not traveling through normal hyperspace. The Shadow Heart has opened a dimensional rift. They're coming through the space between realities. Commander Vex turned to the council. "How many ships do we have ready for combat?" "The combined Galactic Defense Fleet numbers approximately 8,000 vessels," Admiral Kresh replied. "But against the Shadow Collective, it won't be enough," Marcus said quietly. "My ancestors' records show that the Shadow Collective can field millions of ships when led by the Shadow Heart directly. And those ships don't need crews, supplies, or rest. They're extensions of the central consciousness." Despair settled over the council meeting. Several representatives began discussing evacuation protocols, debating which planets might be saved and which would have to be abandoned. But Marcus was studying the star charts with his enhanced tactical knowledge, seeing possibilities that others missed. "There is a way," he said suddenly, "but it requires something the galaxy has never attempted before." All conversation stopped. Every eye focused on Marcus. "We can't defeat the Shadow Collective in direct combat," Marcus continued, "but we don't have to. We need to get me close enough to the Shadow Heart to establish a neural connection." Dr. Kayla looked horrified. "A neural connection with the Shadow Heart would kill you instantly. The amount of dark energy flowing through that entity would destroy any organic mind." Marcus smiled grimly. "Any normal organic mind, yes. But I'm not normal anymore. The shadow contamination I survived has created a buffer in my neural pathways. I can interface with shadow consciousness without being consumed by it." "And then what?" Commander Vex asked. "Then I feed the Shadow Heart the same kind of false information I used against the Shadow Commander," Marcus explained. "But on a massive scale. I convince it that the entire galaxy is protected by human fleets, that every system has defenses, that attacking anywhere will result in overwhelming retaliation." Admiral Kresh shook his head. "The Shadow Heart is far more intelligent than its subordinates. It won't be fooled by simple deceptions." "You're right," Marcus agreed, "which is why I won't be lying to it." The room fell silent as everyone tried to understand what Marcus meant. "Explain," Commander Vex said carefully. Marcus stood up and activated the star chart's historical display, showing the positions of human colonies 300 years ago. During the original war, Earth had established colonies throughout this region of space. When the war ended, those colonies didn't just disappear. They went dark, hiding from galactic politics and alien contact. "Hidden human colonies?" Dr. Kayla whispered. "But the galactic census shows humans only on Earth and a few minor outposts." "The galactic census shows what humans want it to show," Marcus said. "My ancestors' final mission wasn't just to defeat the Shadow Collective. It was to establish a network of hidden human settlements throughout the galaxy. A backup plan in case the Shadows ever returned." He manipulated the star chart, revealing dozens of points where human colonies had been established in secret. For 3 centuries, these colonies have been developing in isolation. They've been preparing for this day, building fleets and weapons based on the technology that originally defeated the Shadows. Commander Vex studied the chart with growing amazement. "How many colonies? How many ships?" "I don't have exact numbers," Marcus admitted. "The colonies were designed to be completely independent, but conservative estimates suggest at least 50 hidden worlds with a combined population in the millions." The implications were staggering. The galactic community had believed humans were a minor species with limited space presence. In reality, they had been building a secret empire for 3 centuries. "Can you contact these hidden colonies?" Admiral Kresh asked. Marcus looked down at his bracelet, which was now glowing with steady warmth. "This bracelet isn't just an identification device. It's a communication beacon, tuned to frequencies that only human military technology can detect." He activated the bracelet's hidden functions, using knowledge from his ancestors' memories. A complex series of signals began broadcasting into deep space, using encryption methods that predated galactic civilization. The signal will take time to reach all the colonies, Marcus explained, but they've been monitoring for this specific beacon for 300 years. When they receive it, they'll know the Shadow Collective has returned. Through the station's viewports, they could see space beginning to distort as the Shadow Fleet approached. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as massive dark shapes began, emerging from dimensional rifts. 4 hours until they arrive, the automated voice announced. Marcus turned to Commander Vex. I need the fastest ship you have, something that can get me close to the Shadow Heart before the hidden colonies arrive. That's suicide, Dr. Kayla protested. Even if you survive the neural connection, how do you escape afterward? Marcus thought about Emma, safe on Earth with his grandmother watching over her. He thought about the 40 billion innocent beings in this solar system, and the trillions more throughout the galaxy. Sometimes, he said quietly, escape isn't the point. The fastest ship in the Galactic Defense Fleet was a prototype stealth fighter called the Nova Strike. As Marcus climbed into the pilot's seat, he felt his ancestors' memories guiding him through the unfamiliar controls. 3 centuries of human military knowledge flowed through his mind, showing him how to fly the alien craft better than pilots who had trained for years. Remember, you only need to get within neural range of the Shadow Heart, Commander Vex said through the communication system. Once you establish connection, the hidden human colonies should receive the tactical data they need. Marcus nodded, his hands moving across the controls with inherited expertise. What's the status on colony responses? We've detected answer signals from 37 hidden worlds so far, Commander Vex replied. Admiral Kresh estimates their combined fleet strength at over 20,000 ships. Through the cockpit viewport, Marcus could see the Shadow Fleet emerging fully from their dimensional rifts. The space around Galactic Station 7 had become a nightmare landscape of twisting reality and dark energy. At the center of the formation, a structure the size of a small moon materialized, the Void Fortress containing the Shadow Heart. 37 colonies, Marcus repeated. My ancestor would be proud. He launched the Nova Strike and immediately engaged the stealth systems. The ship became invisible to most forms of detection, slipping through the shadow formations like a ghost. But Marcus knew stealth would only get him so far. The Shadow Heart could sense human life force directly once he got close enough. The journey through the Shadow Fleet was like flying through a cosmic horror story. Ships that looked like living creatures made of crystallized darkness moved in perfect formation. Shadow fighters swarmed around larger vessels that pulsed with malevolent energy, and everywhere the sense of vast intelligence watching, calculating, planning. Nova Strike, we're reading massive energy buildups from shadow weapons platforms, came a warning from the station. They're targeting populated worlds throughout the system. Marcus saw it too. Shadow destroyers were positioning themselves around planets, their planet-killing weapons beginning to charge. He had minutes, maybe less, before they started firing. I'm accelerating approach, Marcus announced, pushing the Nova Strike's engines beyond their recommended limits. As he neared the Void Fortress, its true size became apparent. The structure was hollow, filled with swirling energy that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. At its center, a massive consciousness pulsed with dark power, the Shadow Heart. Warning alarms filled the cockpit as shadow fighters detected his approach. The stealth systems were failing under the intense psychic pressure radiating from the Shadow Heart. So much for the quiet approach, Marcus muttered, switching to combat mode. The Nova Strike burst from stealth just as a squadron of shadow fighters opened fire. Marcus threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, his inherited combat instincts allowing him to avoid weapons fire that should have been impossible to dodge. But there were too many enemies. Energy blasts began scoring hits on his shields, and the Nova Strike's systems started failing one by one. Then suddenly, space around the Void Fortress erupted with new arrivals. Human ships began materializing out of hyperspace. But these weren't the sleek, polished vessels of the Galactic Defense Fleet. They were angular, aggressive-looking craft covered in armor and bristling with weapons Marcus had never seen before. Their hulls bore no identification marks except for simple numerical codes. Colony Fleet Designation 7 reporting for duty, came a voice over Marcus's communication system. The accent was unmistakably human. but carried the confidence of people who had been preparing for war their entire lives. Colony, Fleet 15 in position. Another voice added. Colony Fleet 23 ready for engagement. The reports kept coming. Hidden human fleets were arriving from dozens of directions, surrounding the Shadow Armada with military precision that spoke of 3 centuries of preparation. Marcus smiled as he recognized the tactics. These weren't just random colonial militias. They were the descendants of his ancestors' unit, carrying on a military tradition that had never truly ended. All colony fleets. This is Marcus Chen, descendant of Sergeant First Class Chen, 47th Terran Assault Brigade, he announced over the military frequencies. I am beginning final approach to the Shadow Heart. A moment of silence then. Acknowledged Terran Actual. Colony fleets will maintain perimeter and cover your approach. Good hunting. The space battle erupted around Marcus as he pushed the damaged Nova Strike toward the Void Fortress. Human ships engaged shadow fighters in combat that lit up the darkness with energy weapons fire. The hidden colonies had clearly spent their centuries well. Their technology was far advanced from what the Galactic Defense Fleet possessed. But the Shadow Collective wasn't caught off guard for long. The Shadow Heart began directing its forces with terrifying intelligence, adapting to human tactics within minutes. Shadow destroyers turned their planet-killing weapons on the human fleets. Colony Fleet 12 taking heavy casualties, came a report over the communications. We need more time. Marcus pushed the Nova Strike harder, diving through the chaotic battle toward the Void Fortress. His ship was barely holding together, systems failing one by one, but he was almost there. As he approached the swirling energy at the center of the fortress, Marcus felt the Shadow Heart's attention focus on him. The sensation was like standing before a black hole of pure malevolence, a consciousness so vast and alien that it threatened to overwhelm his human mind. But the shadow contamination he had survived created a buffer, allowing him to approach without being instantly destroyed. He could sense the Shadow Heart's surprise. It had never encountered a human who could resist its psychic pressure. Marcus brought the Nova Strike to a stop just outside the energy field surrounding the Shadow Heart. He could see it now, a massive pulsing entity of pure darkness, connected to every shadow creature in the galaxy through streams of dark energy. This is it, he whispered, reaching for the neural interface controls. Before he could activate them, the Shadow Heart spoke directly into his mind. Its voice was like the sound of dying stars, filled with the echoes of countless consumed civilizations. Human, it said, your species should have remained hidden. Now you will watch as we consume everything you have built. Marcus smiled grimly. Actually, you're going to help us finish what my ancestor started. He activated the neural interface and reached out toward the Shadow Heart with his mind. The connection formed instantly, flooding his consciousness with the vast network of the Shadow Collective. But instead of being overwhelmed, Marcus began projecting images and information directly into the network. Only this time, he wasn't lying. Through the connection, he showed the Shadow Heart the truth about humanity. 50 hidden worlds, each one a fortress prepared for this exact moment. Fleets that had been building for 3 centuries using technology specifically designed to fight shadows. Weapons that could destroy dark matter itself. Most importantly, he showed the Shadow Heart something it had never encountered before: human determination to protect what they loved. The Shadow Heart recoiled as it realized the truth. Humanity hadn't been hiding in fear for 3 centuries. They had been preparing for war, and now that war had finally come. Through the neural connection with the Shadow Heart, Marcus experienced something no human had ever felt before: the true scope of the Shadow Collective's consciousness. It was ancient beyond measure, a parasitic intelligence that had consumed hundreds of civilizations across multiple galaxies. But as Marcus maintained the link, he began to understand something his ancestor had only suspected. The Shadow Collective was afraid. For 3 centuries, it had been unable to return to this dimension because of what humanity had done during the Void Wars. The humans hadn't just defeated the shadow forces. They had fundamentally changed the nature of reality in this region of space, creating barriers that prevented shadow entities from operating at full power. You think your preparations matter? The Shadow Heart projected into Marcus's mind. We have consumed civilizations far more advanced than yours, but Marcus could feel its uncertainty through the neural link. The Shadow Heart was accessing the memories of every shadow creature in the galaxy, trying to understand the scope of human defenses. What it found was confusing. Human colonies that shouldn't exist, technology that seemed impossible, military coordination that spanned centuries. "Show me your greatest weapon," Marcus challenged through the connection. "Show me what makes you think you can win." The Shadow Heart, perhaps driven by pride or perhaps trying to intimidate Marcus into breaking the connection, opened its memory core completely. Through the link, Marcus suddenly had access to every piece of information the Shadow Collective possessed. He saw the location of shadow staging areas throughout the galaxy. He witnessed the consumption of entire star systems, the tactics used to break through planetary defenses, the weaknesses in shadow technology that had never been exploited. Most importantly, he discovered the truth about the Shadow Heart itself. It wasn't just the central consciousness of the Shadow Collective. It was a prison. Inside the swirling mass of dark energy, Marcus could sense thousands of absorbed civilizations, their consciousness trapped and used to power the Shadow Network. The Shadow Heart was fed by the life force and knowledge of everyone it had conquered. "You're not a conqueror," Marcus realized. "You're a parasite, and parasites can be cured." The Shadow Heart tried to sever the neural connection, but Marcus held on with desperate strength. Through the link, he began transmitting everything he had learned directly to the human colony fleets. Battle plans flooded through the communication networks. Tactical data about shadow weaknesses spread from ship to ship. The locations of shadow staging areas were shared with every human commander simultaneously. But Marcus wasn't finished. Using the neural link, he began to do something that should have been impossible. He started communicating directly with the trapped civilizations. "Inside the Shadow Heart, you're still there," he projected to the absorbed consciousness. "All of you. Every civilization the shadows have consumed. You're trapped, but you're not destroyed." Thousands of alien voices responded, consciousness that had been prisoners for millennia suddenly realizing they could fight back. The Shadow Heart began to convulse as its internal structure became unstable. "What are you doing?" the Shadow Heart demanded. "Something my ancestor never thought of," Marcus replied. "He tried to destroy you from the outside. But the real battle is inside you." Through the neural link, Marcus began coordinating with the trapped civilizations. Together, they started to turn the Shadow Heart's own power against itself. The consciousness that had been used to control shadow. Creatures throughout the galaxy began redirecting those same creatures to attack shadow installations. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Shadow Collective. Throughout the galaxy, shadow fleets suddenly turned on each other. Shadow destroyers that had been preparing to consume planets instead began attacking shadow command ships. The unity that had made the Shadow Collective unstoppable for eons began to crumble. "Impossible," the Shadow Heart projected, its voice now filled with genuine fear. "No species has ever successfully corrupted our network." "No species ever tried working together," Marcus replied. "Humans don't fight alone." The space battle around the Void Fortress had shifted dramatically. With Marcus providing real-time intelligence about shadow tactics and weaknesses, the human colony fleets were systematically dismantling shadow defenses. Ships that had seemed invincible just minutes before were falling to coordinated human attacks. But the effort was taking its toll on Marcus. Maintaining a neural connection with an entity of such vast power while coordinating with thousands of trapped alien consciousness was pushing his enhanced human abilities beyond their limits. Through the Nova Strike's communication system, he could hear reports from across the galaxy as shadow installations fell one by one. Hidden human colonies were emerging from centuries of concealment, revealing themselves to be powerful military forces perfectly positioned to strike at shadow weak points. "Marcus," Commander Vex's voice came through the static-filled communication. "The shadow fleet in this system is retreating." You did it. But Marcus knew the job wasn't finished. The Shadow Heart was still intact, and while its control network was damaged, it could eventually regain power and rebuild. "Not yet," Marcus said weakly. "I need to finish this." Through the neural link, he reached out to his ancestors' memories one final time. In those inherited experiences, he found the knowledge he needed, not a weapon or a tactic, but an understanding of what made humans different from every other species the shadows had encountered. Humans didn't just fight to survive. They fought to protect something larger than themselves. Marcus thought about Emma, waiting for him back on Earth. He thought about the 40 billion innocent beings in this solar system. He thought about all the civilizations throughout the galaxy who deserved the chance to live free from shadow tyranny. And then he made his choice. Instead of severing the neural connection, Marcus opened his mind completely to the shadow heart. But instead of allowing it to drain his life force, he began sharing something the ancient entity had never experienced: human hope, love, and determination to protect others. The effect on the shadow heart was devastating. An entity that fed on fear and despair suddenly found itself flooded with emotions it couldn't process or absorb. The trapped civilizations within its consciousness began to break free as the shadow heart's control mechanisms overloaded. What is this? The shadow heart projected in confusion and growing panic. This is why humans can't be conquered, Marcus replied, feeling his strength fading but his resolve growing stronger. We don't fight because we hate our enemies. We fight because we love what we're protecting. The Void Fortress began to collapse as the shadow heart lost control of its own structure. Throughout the galaxy, shadow creatures were breaking free from hive mind control, some dissolving entirely, others transforming into something new and benign. As the neural connection finally overwhelmed his human brain, Marcus felt a moment of perfect clarity. He could sense Emma's presence across space, could feel her love reaching out to him. He could feel the gratitude of billions of beings throughout the galaxy who would now live free from shadow tyranny. The last thing he heard was his ancestor's voice, welcoming him home. 3 days later, Marcus woke up in a medical facility on Earth. Dr. Kayla was standing beside his bed, her crystalline features showing relief and amazement. "How am I alive?" Marcus asked weakly. "The trapped civilizations inside the shadow heart," she explained. "When they broke free, they used the last of their combined life force to send you home safely. Every species the shadows had ever conquered worked together to save you." Commander Vex entered the room, followed by a small figure that made Marcus's heart leap. Emma, running toward his bed with tears of joy streaming down her face. "Daddy, you came home," she cried, throwing herself into his arms. As Marcus held his daughter close, Commander Vex delivered his report. "The Shadow Collective is completely destroyed. Every shadow installation in the galaxy has fallen. The hidden human colonies are establishing contact with galactic civilization, and the freed alien civilizations are rebuilding their worlds." Marcus looked down at his bracelet, which now glowed with a warm, steady light. "What about the galaxy's defenses? What happens if something like this happens again?" Commander Vex smiled. "The Galactic Council has voted unanimously to establish the Terran Defense Initiative. Earth and its colonies are now officially the protectors of galactic civilization." Emma looked up at her father with pride. "Does this mean you have a good job now, Daddy?" Marcus laughed, feeling truly happy for the first time in years. "Yes, sweetheart. Daddy has a very good job, and we'll never have to worry about food again." As he held his daughter and looked out at the stars, Marcus realized that his great-great-grandfather's legacy wasn't just about fighting monsters in space. It was about proving that ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they fought for something bigger than themselves. The bracelet on his wrist pulsed with gentle warmth, a reminder that some jobs, the most important ones, were worth any sacrifice.